Welcome back everybody, this is Grace, and we're going to be talking about halfway reviewing the recent release, which is the 22nd anniversary event. Well, event I say. It's a limited time shop. Just to go through very briefly, we got some pretty faces, some nice ones. We've got the painting, of course. What does it look like? It looks like that. We've got the cupcake. I'll read the description. When facing storied heroes like yourself, outlaws often say, go for the eyes. It's only poetic justice that they'll wind up blind and bleeding when you walk off eating this cupcake. It's a blind and bleed infliction. Let's see what else it does. What's the SP cost? Exactly 44. That is the exact amount that elemental resistance costs. Could that be it? I don't know. We'll see in our testing. We have the Xalkos Thrax Ward. The replica shield bleeds foes when blocking in honor of an ancient hero who is said to have turned against their empire to defend those in its conquering path. Definitely a reference. Xalkos Thrax is surely someone's name. I don't know it. We're not worried about it. And then 3 weapons. The Bloodletter, melee sword, Harbinger, ranged bow, and a Thame magic weapon that boosts spells. Now, these 3 are all pretty much the same. They empower bleed. The bleed empowering, the heavy blade increase the power of bleeding effects. Magic weapon says it does spells. Pretty sure it does, but let's verify a bunch of information and see if we can figure out exactly what these items do and exactly how much % melee they sacrifice for their effects. Now, I'm running a pretty random little setup here, and I realize I forgot to train intellect, so you'll have to excuse me while I pause and do that, because I don't want to leak my password. Okay, so we're back. The first thing we're actually going to test is the shield, the Xalkos Thrax Ward. Now, click to triple the potency of the bleed effect. Your shield inflicts when blocking enemy attacks, costs 78 SP per turn. Now that's curious to me. Oh, what the hell's wrong with my pets? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nothing, I just don't have a most recent option. Anyways, that's curious to me because 78 SP is 20% melee, which means the shield trades 10% melee in one way or another. But its MRM is standard. Let's actually see, you know what? It said 14 melee in the battle log. I'm at 62. If it is truly 14, I should go down to 48. I do. Okay, let's open the battle log and see if the monster is attacking 48 resistance. This won't actually tell us for sure. Actually, it'll be depends on whether it's melee, ranged, or magic. What we'll do is we'll just drink a mana potion and just stall the turn. Okay, melee, and he did attack 62. But we don't actually know whether it's doing that because sometimes they do it as an invisible modifier on the enemy. They give the enemy +3 BTH, but for some way, this shield is trading 10% melee, not 5, according to the pop-up. Whether or not we can trust the pop-up, we'll see. But let's stall again. I don't think I have any dodge gear right now, so we'll just wait for him to miss. Shouldn't take too long. Shouldn't take too long. There we go. Open wound as it blocks their strike. So this shield scales off of monster hit count. If the monster hits once, weak bleed. If the monster hits 4 times, doubly strong bleed compared to what you invest. If the monster hits 2 times, expected bleed compared to what you invest. So we have a power point 222 bleed, which means that the assumed power of the bleed 2 hits would be power point 44444. Now I took the liberty of trying to figure out what could cause that by going for bleed valuation. Now the value of dodging something is a divided by 0.15 multiplier. So if we take 5% melee divided by 0.15, we get, pardon me, we get 33% melee. If we take 10% melee, as the shield claims, which I'm still skeptical of, if we take 10% melee, we get 66% melee. Now, 66% melee on a power 1 or on a bleed that is a 50-50 save would be a power 0.66 bleed. We're getting a power 0.444 bleed. Let's try out some calculator stuff. You can hear my keyboard, I hope. But I'm typing in 66 divided by 0.7. You're a bitch. CBT. There we go. the 0.22 bleed, that's 44% melee per. I mean, could it make sense? 44% melee per? We'd get 88 if we're getting 66% melee. I mean, to be honest, no. At 66% melee, if you have a plus 20 save, you get power 1.5 burn. So that obviously doesn't work. If you have a minus 20 save, you get power 2.8 burn, roughly power 2.78, which also doesn't work. If you have in the middle, you get a 43, which I guess could be it. 43 rounding up. Yeah, that could be. So what I'm saying now, and this is all abstract because you can't see my spreadsheet, I'll put a little screenshot of it in so you guys can see what I'm looking at. But if you look at the 65 section, that's PowerPoint 433, so power 66 might. Yeah, let me add a row. Hold on. Okay, so now that I've added a row, and in the screenshot you're just going to see the row there for 66. Now that I've added a row, the numbers don't lie. I was wrong. The shield is correct. So the shield is doing a minus 10 save bleed, because that would be power 44. So 1/2 hit would be power 22. So that actually makes perfect sense. So the shield is a minus 10 save, which is nice. We love negative save bleeds. So that's what it does. It invests 10% melee. 5% of that is EMC. The other 5%, who knows? Who knows? We can actually figure out if it's weapon damage later, but we'll do that later. So that's what the shield does. Pays 10% melee. Figure out if it's weapon damage or something else later, but for now, it does a bleed. It's balanced correctly. It's OP as hell, but because you can get triple that, remember? So 30% melee. We divide that by 1.5. What's 30 divided by 1.5? Yeah, 200% melee output. And don't forget, you can multiply it by 2 if the monster has 4 hits, so that's 400% melee and bleed in a single turn. Probably not the most balanced thing in the world, but God forbid they release a bad item. Anyways, I'm a little petty. We're gonna try out this Misc. So let's see what the pop-up says. Minus 50% incoming wind damage. So first off, I just want to give a shout out to the developers for making a cheap resistance Misc. Wind resistance and nothing else. Now, let's see. Let's basic attack with a weapon that doesn't do anything. And let's see what happens. Your foe is pained at the sight of your delicious cupcake. So we got the bleed and the... That was a strong ass bleed. Was that, or am I forgetting what we started from? We started from 0.222, right? Jesus Christ. And an 8 bleed. Let's read that pop-up again. Your foe refuses to open their eyes, not wanting to behold your delicious cupcake. Your foe is pained at the sight of your delicious cupcake. Lost 98 SP. Okay, so I lied. This is not a... oh, actually, no, that could have been the shield. Well, nope, it wasn't. This is not a free 44 SP defensive Misc, it's just a Misc that has a secondary cost of 100 SP whenever you attack. Does it trigger when you drink a potion? Lost 78 SP. What the hell? Where did I lose 78 from? Hello? Let's isolate this variable and drink another potion. 35 damage. We lost 44 SP. That's from the Misc. Use silos because I'm going to run out of potions if I keep this up. Okay. So we're not spending any SP. We attack with Nihilak's Charm Surfboard. We lose 98 SP. Okay. So it always does spend 98 SP, which is exactly 25% melee. So let's figure out what the thing is probably doing with that 25% melee. I would imagine it's split half and half between the bleed and the blind. I just imagine, no real reason, I just figure that's likely. Oh, it's per hit. Okay, hold on. If it's per hit, I'm going to leave the battle and come back in, and we are going to do a multi-hit armor, so we don't have to worry about calculating, or at least a hit armor with reliable hits. I think we'll do Gog Shapeshift, and we'll divide by 2, because if it's 4 hits, it sets at least 4 hits. Yep, okay, so it's capped. Oh, interesting. So the bleed is per hit, the blind is not. Okay, so the bleed is power 0.05 per hit. Averaging out at 0.01. That could be 10% melee invested. The blind is -7 monster BTH. How's blind valued again? I think it's the same as MRM, no? So 3 to 5. This would be like 10.5% melee. No, 10 a third. Well, 10 like 11.5% melee roughly. So that'd be like 20. It's like 21% melee. It could be that these have a negative save, or one of the two has a negative save. Probably not the bleed, because then the numbers wouldn't work out so well. But I bet the blind has a slightly negative save, or it's just valued wrong. But this Misc pays 25% melee in SP when you attack to inflict a 0.05 bleed per hit at a +0 save. And at the end of turn, has a some percent chance, probably like 60, so -10 save, I don't know. Or maybe -20, I don't know, who cares. Chance to inflict a minor blind. Do these things scale off of wind resistance? Let's go find out by running the ones at... we'll go to Tibble, actually. I was gonna go to the, I was gonna go to the War-Torn Dragon, but I don't want to fail the infliction. Oh, but Tibble's is just as bad. Hold on, I'm gonna think of a monster real quick. Okay, so I don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We're gonna go to the Earth area, because this should have things with non-100 wind resistance. This has 90. So now we will know if the amount of bleed or blind scales off of wind resistance, because the bleed and blind will be slightly different. We're going to use Gog Shapeshift again. I really should use some accuracy boosters. It'll be fine. Let's not worry about it. So let's see if it scales off of wind resistance. We landed 3 of our 4 hits. Oh, it's a 2-turn blind. That would do it. Doesn't seem to scale off wind resistance. It was exactly a -7 blind, so we can say that this is a non-elemental Misc, except that it, of course, defends against wind resistance. The blind being 2 turns, I think, fixes the valuation. Well, yeah, that might make it OP, actually. Hold on. Yeah, 7, so that's like 14 blind. That'd be like 25% melee on its own. Oh, but it's 50% save, so... Actually, yeah, that works almost perfectly. So, probably about half and half bleed to blind, or 10% melee on the bleed, and... Hold on, I'm gonna crunch the numbers real quick on exactly how much is on the blind. Okay, I think it's 11.5% melee invested in the blind, but I'm not really that bothered. Basically, the Misc spends SP to inflict a bleed and a blind. Okay, so now we're going to test out the weapons, and this is what I'm most interested to see because these don't bleed on their own. And what I'm really curious about is if they do anything on their own. So I don't think it will, but I'm just going to attack this with Gog form. Should do pretty normal damage here. No bleed triggers. So now what I'm going to do, equip the Xalkos Thrax Ward. Harden the space with Space Gauntlet. Just stall my turn with Silas Staff, and let's see what happens. Okay, so now we're at a 0.667 bleed. Apparently yeah, okay. So the pop-up is reversed, or just doesn't have the anti-pop-up. Yeah, so there's no click to like undo your shields thing. It just has the same pop-up. Click to boost your shield's power. But anyways, we're at 0.667, and what I want to do now is use the Bloodletter. And I think what I'm going to do is just attack 4 times see how much bleed is enacted. Amplify the wounded. 0.66 to 1.473. Jesus Christ. 1.473 minus 0.666. Don't forget the equal sign in the spreadsheet, fellas. A rookie mistake. 8.07. If we divide that by 2, assuming it's scaled by hit count, which I actually haven't verified. I should verify that. We'll verify that quickly with... Did I not bring a 1-hit armor? I forgot to bring a 1-hit armor. We'll do a 2-hit armor. Yeah, okay, so it's scaled off hit count. So that means let's divide that by 4 to figure out what 1 hit is. Well, I could just do 2 hits. Yeah, let's divide it by 2. So that means each hit, or each turn, it assumes 0.4035 bleed for 2 hits. So 0.405 bleed power, and we don't know how much percent melee we're investing, which kind of makes it tricky to guess what the save is. So instead, what I'm actually going to do is do some cool process stuff and see if we can figure out. So Matchmaker, when you toggle on Matchmaker, the armor trades 50% damage to inflict a control. If our damage goes to exactly 0, we'll know that the weapon trades at least 50% damage. Didn't go to exactly 50%. Mutter reduces your outgoing damage by 10%. Let's see if it goes to 0. Does not go to 0. Interesting. Now it goes by 30%. We go to 0. Okay. So that means that the amount of damage the weapon trades is less than 40%, because remember we had 60% damage reduction here. So if the weapon had a minus 40% damage penalty, we would have done 0 damage. But also more than 20% because we have minus 80% damage here, and the weapon still no longer does damage. So I'm going to assume this weapon pays 25% melee in damage. It might also pay in like making the monster deal more damage or reducing your accuracy. But I didn't see a pop-up for that. Let's attack one more time. Amplify the wounds bleeding on your foe. So I'm going to assume it pays 25% melee because that's just what makes sense. 25% melee could be up to 30% melee if it counts the MC, or maybe the MC is just having a trigger. I also have no clue how this is valued. I think it should be a player controlled trigger at minimum, because you have to have a bleed before you inflict the bleed with this weapon. Debatably, it also needs a decompression bonus because you need 2 items to use this item to its full effect. I'm not going to worry about it. But if we have 0.4035 bleed, let's look at some options. So I'll again put up the spreadsheet. It could be about 25% melee with a minus 10 save. Or excuse me, with a plus 10 save. Or could be... Well, it wouldn't make sense if it was 40% melee unless the weapon pays in some other way as well. It's not paying SP, surely I would have noticed that, right? Yeah, no, it's not paying SP. Or HP or MP. Could be... I mean, 30% melee at like a plus 10 save kind of makes sense. I'm not sure. But it's paying 25% damage, I'm almost positive. So we know it's paying 25% damage and maybe something else. If it was just 25% melee, you would expect a plus 10 save, so an advantage to the monster to get 37.5% melee. There could be a trigger here or there. I don't know, man. I got no clue. But it is paying 25% weapon damage to inflict 0.2018 bleed per hit, roughly. Or 0.4 in 2 hits or 0.807 in 4 hits. So that's what the melee weapon does. The ranged weapon presumably does exactly the same. Oh, it could have a BTH lean, actually, the melee weapon. Oh, the melee weapon having a BTH lean would make the calculations a little harder. How could I figure that out? I don't think I could, honestly. I forget if there's a way to do that. There used to be, but yeah, I don't think I can do that. Okay. It would require data mining, I think, but that's illegal, so don't do that. I don't know if anyone can. I don't know how to do that, but you'd have to figure it out. Anyways, weapon takes 25% damage. Probably has a BTH lean. Actually, you know what? Here, I'm gonna do some calculations. If it has a -5 BTH lean, let's see what the bleed would be. Wait a minute. I did the wrong calculation. Hold on, I'm pausing again. Okay, I figured out what it would be if it was a -10 save and a -5 BTH lean. It didn't quite math out to be the same. So I'm not gonna like guess and check like every possible option, especially since I don't know if the weapon is paying elsewhere more than the 25% melee. But 25% melee is in like the range of potential to get a 0.4 bleed. You'd have to at least have a +10 save, so I don't know, curious, but seems like it pays 25% damage and a little something else, or has a trigger of some variety to have a stronger bleed. That being said, we're going to do the Athame now, and the Athame I want to test a lot of things, but first we're going to get the hell out of Dodge. Okay, we are going to go to Knight of the Firework doesn't have any damage modifiers. I mean, a bunch of those armors don't, but I just had to think of one on the moment. So first, let's cast Boulder Dash and see if the weapon bleeds. Weapon does not bleed. Okay. Now let's cast Boulder Dash again. 769. Is that normal? Or is that a lot less damage? Let's see. Let's use any other weapon, like Malak's Charm Surfboard, and see if we do a boatload more damage. That's the most scuff test of all time, but basically what I'm trying to do is see if the weapon trades spell damage, even when the monster isn't bleeding, which it doesn't seem to, but again, that was a super scuff test because it was literally 2 data points, so we're not going to take that as gospel. I'm just going to assume that they made the item right and it doesn't take spell damage without actually inflicting bleed. So what we're going to do to get some bleed is we're going to use this shield and Space Gauntlet for 1 turn of semi-auto dodge. Maybe we use Silo Staff to draw mana, just to skip our turn. Okay, so we got bleed. Let's get rid of the shield. Athame, and we will use Boulder Dash. Actually, you know what? Yeah, Boulder Dash. Amplify the wounds in your bleeding flow. We went from 0.222 to 0.424. That means from 1 hit, you got 0.202 worth of bleed. Okay, so 20% melee of bleed at a 0.5 save. Okay. Let's use Petrifying Cursed Gaze, because this weapon, this will trade 50% damage just about of the spell. So if the spell does like near 0 damage, then we'll know that it's trading about 40% spell damage or something like that. Oh, does it always do 0 on that second hit? Also, I missed how much the bleed went up by. Let's leave and go back. Start battle. We're actually gonna use Bone Chinoceros for the bleed this time. We're gonna use Silas Staff stall the turn. So what I'm doing right now is trying to isolate variables. Forgot to make it bleed, and we're actually gonna use Petrifying Cursed Gaze just as normal and see if the second hit always does 0 damage or not. No, so it seems to do the same damage. Well, then why would he have done 0 on the second hit? Okay, 0.094 bleed. Let's use Athame and let's use Scissor Explosion. So Scissor Explosion is 4 auto hits. We're at 0.094. Go to 0.901. Okay. Point equals 0.901 minus 0.094. 0.807. That is equal to 0.202 times 4, just about with rounding. So we're going to assume that this does scale. Well, we're going to know for sure that this weapon does scale with magic weapon or magic spell hit count. Okay, that being said, let's try and figure out how much damage it trades from the spell. So we saw that this spell, which trades 50% damage, that's just in the info subs for the Petrifying Cursed Gaze. I grabbed it at random. Did 0 on the second hit, which is really strange. I'm not going to worry about it quite yet. What we're going to do, and you may know this, currently in Paragon mode. Yeah, so intensity. And I'm pretty sure if I read the info subs for Nemesis Plate, Avenging Heart. In Paragon mode, you deal -20 damage with 20% damage with all spells and attacks, etc. Intensity. So it's like -10% melee or -10% spell damage, which is not a lot, but it's something. So let's see if the spell does 0 damage this time. Does 0 on the second hit? I don't know why that is, man. Why could that be happening? Does the spell do different hits? Hold on, I have an idea. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab Emerald Rain, because that is a spell that I think trades even more than. No, it doesn't trade half damage. Let me see how much it trades. I'm gonna try and find a different spell, different earth spell that trades 50% damage, because this one seems to have imbalanced damage on its 2 hits, which I don't think is going to be useful. Okay, so I'm back armed with a new arsenal of spells. Let me, there's actually 2 steps I can take. So one thing we know is that a power 0.4 bleed, or 0.404, I guess, that is about 40% melee at a 0 save. At a -20 save, that could be up to almost 100% melee. 95 just about. Or probably like 93, so that doesn't make much sense. Well, 42.5 could be 95% melee spell damage. -42.5 spell damage could be 95% melee. But that would be at a -20 save. I suspect they wouldn't do that. Well, yeah, they might. 60% melee invested, which would be 30% spell damage. At a -10 save, could be 40% melee. There's a lot of things it could be. But what I did was I got Mandate. So first we're going to cast Mandate. Now this does -90% damage. I think I figured out what's happening. The weapon is not triggering on the first hit of spells, or the damage reduction isn't triggering on the first hit of spells. You saw how the first hit of Mandate did 20, but the next 2 did 0. That means that damage reduction isn't applying on the first hit and is on the second too. I wouldn't say that if I hadn't seen the same thing happen to Petrifying Cursed Gaze earlier. But now that I know that the first hit of Petrifying Cursed Gaze did damage and the second didn't, that's my guess. Why that's happening, I assume a bug. But I'm not going to worry about that. Let's see if it happens again. Science is repeatable. Okay, it's happening again, so I'm pretty sure that's what's happening. Which means if that is indeed happening with Petrifying Cursed Gaze, let's figure out how much Petrifying Cursed Gaze. So yeah, so you didn't see it because it didn't show up, but battle log says 170 and then 0. So again, the first hit went 3. Petrifying Cursed Gaze. So minus 50.77 damage dealt. So I assume that this weapon is taking 50% spell damage, which is 100% melee. What? 100% melee and only power 0.4 bleed? What the hell? That would have to be like literally a -20 save and a down trigger or something. I don't know. Okay, but the way we're gonna test that is to see if Were Dragon Breath, which doesn't quite trade 50% melee. Oh, actually, you know what? I have an even better one. I'm pretty sure Emerald Rain. Let's look it up. Emerald Rain Yeah, minus 40% damage. Oh, this is perfect. This is science in the making, baby. I'm getting a rush. Okay, so you'll see what I'm talking about. Emerald Rain trades minus 40.77% damage. Now, if the weapon does 50% spell damage reduction, this should still do damage on all 4 of its hits. It should do a lot on the first, if our theory is correct, and almost none on the second, third, and fourth, because it'll be doing 10% of its normal damage. However, and here we'll go to Knight of the Fire Orb, just to make sure our nothing's affected, because I forget if Awe has a passive or something. Now, we use this. The foe is bleeding, so the thing will trigger. Emerald Drain. High damage, really low, really low, really low. Okay. This is where it gets good, fellas. Now we switch into Nemesis, which is minus 20% melee and spell damage, which is minus 10%, which should take Emerald Rain to exactly 0. Oh, I'm so good. I'm so good. Oh, it's insane, actually. Oh my god, I'm just... Put me in a situation and I'll come out on top, is what I'm saying. Anyways, so now we have solved the magic weapon. This trades 50% melee and spell damage for what seems to be a minus 20 save bleed with some rounding errors because it should be a tiny bit stronger, but whatever, not a big deal. So the magic earth weapon, minus 50% stealth damage, skills with hit count, 100% melee invested, 50% spell damage traded, and does it work if you do 0 damage? Let's check. We're at 1.896 right now. It does work if you do 0 damage, so you don't have to worry about using a status spell and doing 0 damage. You can just use it and still get your status off. Now, it might not work with all other status spells. Like if we use... Well, these are all... Well, it doesn't work on the first hit, so... I don't know how to test that. Yeah, I'll come back to that later. But some status spells, they have to deal more than 1 damage or more than 0 damage to actually inflict their status, so the bleed might work, but the status from the spell itself might not. You'll have to experiment and see what works or not. But yeah, so that's the magic weapon. The melee weapon we also figured out 25% weapon damage plus something else. Shoot, you know what? I kind of forgot what I even figured out for the melee weapon. Let's use Gog Shapeshift again. We're at... No. Let's use Knight of the Fire Orb. 2 hits. I didn't even look at the damn thing. Like, I'm actually boosted beyond belief. Okay, 3.093. 2 hits. 3.496. That's 3.093. 3.1 to 4.8. That's... No, it's crazy how forgetful I am. Like it's been like 10 minutes since I did the melee weapon test. 3.496 to 3.9. 3.9 minus 3.496. Oh, okay, so 0.202. Right. So melee weapon is 0.404. Bleed for 25% damage and probably something else, although maybe not. Ranged weapon is probably the same, but capped at however many hits it is. I can't be bothered. Misc is 25% melee invested, about half or 10% melee in the bleed, based off hit count, so it can be doubled if you do 4 hits. And then about 12% melee invested in the blind, unless it's at a negative save, then it could be about 15 or 20, who knows. Shield is 10% melee invested, 5% in MC, 5% in something else I couldn't quite figure out. But I can figure it out, actually. Can I? Maybe not. We're not going to worry about it. And it's at a minus 20 save, or no, minus 10 save. So yeah, those are all the items, I think. I think that's everything. Did I get it all? Yeah, so that's what all the items do. How much percent melee they trade for it, how much their saves are. Yeah, could be bugged. But for the amounts they're paying, they're all pretty reasonable. Weapon could be underpaying a tiny bit, but we don't know exactly how the trigger works behind the scenes. If anything, it's probably underpowered because it should have a player control trigger or decompression or some other variety of something or other. But yeah, those are what the items do. I really think players should be able to test these things when the items come out without info subs, because it's not hard. This took me, let's check the recorder, 38 minutes. Well, not everyone has 38 minutes of free time. I certainly didn't for the last 2 days. But yeah, I wish people would test items out more, because if you have the right tools, Mutter is not the only Misc that reduces your outgoing damage. Matchmaker isn't the only armor that reduces your outgoing damage. Nemesis, actually for spell damage, oh, Paladin, you know, Paladin would work too, I think, but there's a lot of ways to test stuff. You can figure almost everything out. So, I think players should test more. So we don't have to rely on the developers and their often incorrect info subs. Not a big deal, everyone makes mistakes, but yeah, good to know what these items do. I'll put a written info sub out publicly and in the YouTube description, if I remember. Yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if this video is even watchable, because I was just like in my head the whole time, thinking about AQ math. I didn't really explain all that much. Might be unwatchable. Well, I'm gonna upload it anyway. Sorry, fellas. I hope you enjoyed. Yeah, can't think of anything else. Bye-bye. Mwah. Spread some peace and love.